Audacity?
Yeah, let me pull that up real quick.
Cool. I'm actually going to do that now too.
There we go. Oh, we don't want to do that. There we go. AirPods. I'm up and ready to hit record when you are.
Go ahead.
Check. Test. Yeah, I'm good.
Perfect. All right, let me just make sure I did too before I ask you to do it and not do it myself like an idiot. Here we go. We're good. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the shop. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the Dynasty Diagnostic podcast. My name is Eitan Mozia. I'm usually joined here by Sam Stompy Lane. He's on a bit of a hiatus this week, so we have what I think is a more exciting guest, more fulfilling guest. Sam, if you're listening, if you don't want to come back, man, it's cool. It's cool. I'm just playing. But I'm really happy to have the guy that we do have in town today. You needed some information on the rookie class. This guy can give you some information on the rookie class. He is the premier rookie whisperer, brand new, promoted to senior writer and the Devi team lead at Dynasty League Football. You guys already know this man. Please join me in welcoming the legendary Destination Devi podcast host. Damn it, I can't talk. Podcast host himself, Ray Garvin. What's going on, Ray?
I'm gonna tell you right now, the introduction that you just gave me was far and above what is deserving of me, but I appreciate it. I'm glad to be here, fill in tonight for Sam. I hope he's enjoying his hiatus or whatever he's doing. Hopefully he's in the gym. I don't want to see him in that singlet. I want to see him in some better shape next time that he puts that bad boy on. But now he's a great guy. Glad to be here and talk some rookies and NFL, college, we could do it all, man. It's whatever.
Absolutely, man. That's what we're definitely going to do. We're going to dive into the rookies, but before we do that, we're going to talk about today and yesterday and kind of what's been going on in the NFL as of late. So obviously, we're in the playoffs now, but the playoffs don't really impact the dynasty player as much as anything else that's going on in the league right now. In fact, we kind of shouldn't be looking to anything except what's going to impact what these guys look like next year. And one of the main things that impacts what players are able to do year in, year out is the type of scheme they find themselves in. There's all kinds of changes at the NFL level when it comes to scheme. Now, there's going to be some things that we can't predict. I don't know about you, but I don't know what the heck Joe Judge is going to do in New York. I don't know what he did in Boston. But if you can tell me that, excellent. But we also have Kevin Stefanski in as the new Browns head coach, reportedly. Ron Rivera is now a Redskin. Matt Rule from Baylor is in Carolina, and Mike McCarthy in Dallas. I kind of just want to bring these up, not necessarily to go through them kind of one at a time, but more to really just kind of talk about potential changes that could impact some of the big players on this team. Tell me what Ron Rivera is going to do with Terry McLaurin in Washington. And let's talk about potentially what Matt Rule can do in Carolina based on what he did at Baylor. He was he was a winning coach, at least for that last season in Baylor. Do we think that that's something that can be replicated in the NFL?
So to answer your original question, I think the general overarching theme that we can surmise from these coaching changes, at least early on, is it's much like when in collegiate athletics, when you get a new athletic director, you get a new head coach that shortly follows that major change. So the first thing that comes to mind in all of these situations is the quarterback, right? What is Matt Rule going to do with Cam Newton, and are they going to use a high draft pick on a rookie quarterback? I know this sounds crazy, but what does it look like with Baker Mayfield in Cleveland? What does it look like with Haskins in Washington? So for me, I think the changes or potential changes, even Dak Prescott in Dallas, he's yet to sign that long term deal. McCarthy's coming in, he's saying all the right things, but depending on what happens with these quarterbacks, I mean that shifts everything, right? I mean that completely anything that you were thinking was going to happen could be subject to change. So for me, the overarching theme for all of these hires is what happens at the quarterback position.
Yeah, you brought up some interesting points. I mean, we really do have to talk about quarterbacks, and we have to be a little bit more critical, maybe, than we've been in the past. Just mentioning some of these young guys that you kind of brought up, I don't necessarily know if Dwayne Haskins is safe in Washington. I think Ron Rivera has come out and said that he believes in him. But, I mean, beyond that, what are you supposed to say as a quarterback? The last person that was supposedly believed in was not going to be drafted over no matter what, was clearly drafted over. Kyler Murray took his spot out in Arizona. So what do we really think is going to be uh, the end all be all for these guys? I would say that I think that Daniel Jones has kind of found himself a spot in the league. I think we're going to see him at least throughout his rookie contract. I don't think there's much of a problem there. But Cam Newton, and then I would also go back to Dwayne Haskins, I think there's real issues that can kind of creep up in both of those situations. Now, it looked like just a few months ago that Cam Newton was clearly on the outs in Carolina, that he was not going to be the new quarterback, that they were going to go ahead and try to find a way to trade him. They can still do that this offseason, but they were happy at the time with the backup quarterback that was, I believe, Kyle Allen. Kyle Allen's experiment didn't quite work out, and now you have to kind of go back to Cam. But is this offense, is it still set up for a guy like Cam Newton if Cam Newton isn't the same type of running quarterback that he's been in the past? Or do we think that this is going to be a total overhaul of the scheme and what they are even able to do on offense, a la something like the Baltimore Ravens, to try and fit a new guy in? Let's talk about some of the quarterback prospects, and let's start with uh, do we think that there is a quarterback prospect that is perfect for a shorter passing guy that's going to be looking for DJ Moore more often than not type quarterback out in Carolina? Who would you put there if you could have your choice? Obviously, we're going to talk about Joe Burrow and Tua Tagovailoa. Let's kind of keep them out of the conversation for right now because I don't think Carolina will quite have access to that. But is there another guy out there that you think can be a year one starter and be an effective one at that?
So I think the quarterback that would fit that build and fit that mold of, the quick timing quarterback, utilizing a lot of short passes, and Carolina did that a lot, right? I know DJ Moore and Curtis Samuel all got their shots down deep, but they did. I mean, it seemed like every game DJ Moore was catching at least 3 to 4 slant routes. You've got Christian McCaffrey out of the backfield. So if I'm looking for a quarterback outside of Tua, outside of Joe Burrow, for the longest, I thought it would be Jalen Hurts. I had said it a couple of times. I thought Jalen Hurts to the Panthers in the second round made a ton of sense, but I'm not quite sure. I think the guy that you would want there, if you had to pick one of the remaining quarterbacks, would probably be Oregon's senior quarterback, Justin Herbert. I think he would fit that build. He's another 6'6", 230, 240 pound athletic type quarterback, just like Cam Newton. He is not the runner that Cam Newton is by far, but he can run the ball. He's very mobile. He's accurate at times, and there are times where he's really erratic. That sort of reminds you of somebody, right, that played quarterback in Carolina. But if I had to
Absolutely.
pick between the remaining five, it would be Justin Herbert over, Jordan Love, over Jalen Hurts, and over Jake Fromm.
So is Justin Herbert kind of locked in as your number three quarterback prospect, regardless of where you're looking at, or is this a team to team situation where you're really looking at fit here when you brought up Justin Herbert?
I don't really. The thing is with the quarterback class, I think you're really looking two, maybe three deep, potentially a fourth, or it's just not. To me, there are the guys after Burrow and Tua aren't so talented, or they're just sort of whatever. It doesn't matter what scheme they fit into, to be quite honest. I think Jake Fromm is who he's been his entire career at Georgia. I think Jalen Hurts is who he's been his entire career in college from Alabama to Oklahoma. He's a running quarterback that can make some throws, but is very inconsistent from the pocket, very inaccurate at times. So I really doesn't matter to me where these guys end up. I think it's Burrow. Two is the more interesting one that I'm really focused on his landing spot. I think it's all but assumed that Joe's going to be a Cincinnati Bengals. So, are the Lions going to take a quarterback for the future? Is it true that the Chargers are really trying to move up? What is Miami going to do? It's been tanked for Tua for like 2 years. So, uh, in that system with Matt Rule, how he used his wide receivers at Baylor, he really only threw to two. A lot of timing in that offense. I would say Justin Herbert would probably be the best bet.
I like that answer. I really do. Now let's play devil's advocate for Ron Rivera in Washington. Let's say that he's going to give Dwayne Haskins every chance to be the starter and to be the long-term option at quarterback, but he still wants to hedge his bets a bit. This is not a guy you're going to get in round 1, round 2, potentially round 3 or lower. You're maybe looking at a backup quarterback spot, a la Kirk Cousins, RG3 type situation where you're hoping one of these guys works out. Is there a guy that's maybe a little bit further down draft boards that people could still potentially take a chance on to maybe be this year's Gardner Minshew?
It's funny you said Gardner Minshew, and I did not know you were going to say that at that moment of time. But the quarterback that I would pick is the understudy of Gardner Minshew, and it's Anthony Gordon, the Washington State signal caller. That wide open Mike Leach spread and shred offense. It doesn't work like that in the NFL, but he's got a lot of arm talent. Footwork in the pocket is absolutely horrible. That's something that he can definitely improve upon. That's not a set in stone skill set. So I think playing behind whomever the starter is, whether that's Kyle Allen, whether it's Cam Newton, I think playing behind that person for a year or two, Anthony Gordon could be somebody that would be a later round sleeper that, after who knows, even if he sat for a couple of weeks and had to come in, he's somebody that can throw the ball, really improved his draft stock this year. And I think the success that Gardner Minshew had coming from that offense, it only sort of gives him a little elevated stock as well. So Anthony Gordon is somebody you can probably grab your first round of waivers after your rookie drafts. That wouldn't be a bad quarterback stash for your bench.
Maybe the real issue here that we should be paying attention to is Mike Leach. Maybe he needs to be in the NFL. Maybe somebody needs to hire him and not hire Kevin Stefanski. What's going on? But I feel like the Browns are kind of spinning their wheels. We've seen this before. I think we're going to see the same thing that we saw last year. We're going to see them not continue to use what worked for them this year under Kevin Stefanski. But it is what it is. If you are a Brown fan, this isn't news to you. But going on in that, I think Mike McCarthy is probably the most boring of these hires, just because I do think a lot of that staff in Dallas is retained. I think you kind of have to. I would certainly. If that's not the case, then I mean, who are you going to bring in to run the offense, and have you really 100% converted to the analytics way of thinking in so much of the way that he's presented himself, I guess, on Twitter and throughout these interviews? I think that two things are pretty much locked in stone, and if they're not, then somebody really needs to stop doing whatever drugs they're doing in Dallas and kind of get their stuff together. Amari Cooper needs to be signed. He was the number 1 draft pick essentially for that team because they traded that for him. To get another Amari Cooper isn't going to be that easy. At this point, for me, it really doesn't matter what he wants. If he's going to be the highest paid receiver, that's only going to last until the next guy signs his contract. And I think that if you're going to spend all that money on Ezekiel Elliott, then you really need to be spending the money on the guy that actually gives you a positive EPA on nearly every play in Amari Cooper. That's number 1. Number 2, if you don't think Dak Prescott is good, we can't be friends. Like, we're done. We're through. Dak Prescott is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. He has improved his accuracy every year. If you look at Dak Prescott's career compared to a guy that I don't know why people don't compare him to, but they probably should, Russell Wilson, it's eerily similar in their numbers in the first 3 to 4 seasons of their career. Dak Prescott, I think, has that type of trajectory. And for that reason, I think Dak Prescott is going to be the starter in Dallas for a long, long time. But if that changes, I'm gonna have to get you back on this show. We're gonna have to rehash it out and just reevaluate our lives at that point because I don't know what you're doing in Dallas. But we're gonna move on from the coaching search and we're gonna go directly into some big games. And I think some takeaways from these big games that you can kind of get today. Obviously, the Titans don't give a anything about anyone and anyone's predictions about the playoffs. They are absolutely destroying teams, playing the Titan way, which involves a lot of defense, a lot of Derrick Henry, and a Ryan Tannehill bomb or two, and it's working for them. Shock Titan win in Baltimore, against Lamar Jackson, who still had over 100 yards on the ground. I mean, is this sustainable? Is this an offense that can work? And is Corey Davis dead?
Well, I absolutely believe it's an offense that can work. It's playoff football since before we were born. You know, everybody's always said in the playoffs, you have to be able to do what? You have to be able to run the ball. And Tennessee runs the ball. They're running the ball better than anybody left in the playoffs right now. And it starts with that 6'3", 6'4", 250-pound monster that on that 60-yard run, if you go back and look at it from sort of the reverse angle, Marcus Peters wanted nothing to do with him once he got to the. He backed up. I mean, he kind of went back and then ended up running him down. But nobody wants to deal with that sledgehammer 30 times a game. And like you said, when he's doing that, the defense is committing to the run. Ryan Tannehill play action. He's throwing the ball to Khalif Raymond. And if you can tell me right now what college he went to, I'd give you $20 because I have no clue. The kid, he may not even have gone to college. They found him at an open tryout and said, "You're fast, you're playing," because you just hit the nail on the head. That is their philosophy. It's play defense. It's run Derrick Henry. It's play action bomb. Ryan Tannehill throw 50 yards after that, and it's sustainable. And they've got the Kansas City Chiefs up next, and I don't think there's anything KC can do to slow down Henry. The question will be, will Tennessee be able to slow down Patrick Mahomes? So that I enjoy watching this archaic brand of football. The Titans have taken it back to the early 90s, and I'm enjoying them establishing the run with one of my favorite running backs in the NFL.
Let's dissect this a bit and let's look at some of the potential players that are definitely going to be involved on their team's offenses next year, but could potentially see their usage spike or usage decrease going into next season. Let's talk about the Baltimore Ravens first. Let's talk about Marquise Brown. Marquise Brown, Deshaun Jackson, I feel like it's a Spider-Man meme we're seeing between the two of them. Like, these guys are the ultimate playmaker, the ultimate weapon when in the game, but it seemingly get hurt on like every play. Even last night, if you were watching closely, I forget what specific play it was on, but Marquise Brown looked like he had a concussion, or at least was holding his head on one of the deep shots that he took. Is Marquise Brown a guy that you're investing anything in dynasty leagues right now, or are you kind of a little bit swayed by some of the injuries that you've seen so far?
I, I'm not investing in Marquise Brown. I sold him in the one league that I have him in. And you're right, he is a home run threat. He's a big play type receiver when he's on the field. He's 160 pounds, 165 pounds, and he does not. It's funny, you watch him and he wants nothing to do with contact. Nothing. I mean, he gets the ball and he's going down. Now he made a heck of a one-handed grab where he took a lick, but he got up from that looking like he was limping around. I don't. If I had Hollywood on my team, especially those leagues where you have deeper flex positions, I think you almost have to treat him like a best ball wide receiver, even in your traditional leagues. You know, there are going to be those weeks where you get absolutely nothing, but then there could be a week where he just absolutely goes berserk and scores you two 60-yard touchdowns. But for me, if he had a better quarterback, a more accurate, let me not say better because Lamar Jackson is probably going to be the NFL MVP, so he's great. But if he had a more accurate quarterback that threw the ball a lot, like a Patrick Mahomes, I think at that point in time I would. But the way this team is set up, it's Mark Andrews, it's the tight ends underneath, it's the receivers underneath. I just don't, I can't foresee myself spending high draft capital on Marquise Brown.
I think that's the general sentiment on Marquise Brown. I've been trying to move him in a few leagues, not because I don't like him, because if I didn't like him, I wouldn't have him in all the leagues that I do have him. But just because it seems like people are really dissuaded from the injury concerns and really dissuaded with Lamar Jackson's passing game evolving down the line. My kind of counter to that is, I mean, look at Lamar Jackson from this year to last year. It's night and day when you look at what he was able to do in terms of improvement, in terms of improving his accuracy. They also just got walloped in the playoffs, and they got walloped doing what they do. They ran the ball. They still were able to put up rushing yards on Tennessee, but they weren't able to score points. If Jim Harbaugh is going to go back to the lab and figure out what to do differently next time, he might conclude, hey, maybe we need to start to pass the ball a little bit more. Maybe we need to be a little bit more a little harder to game plan for than they were this year. So potentially there could be an increased role for Marquise Brown down the line. I just think that one big thing that people miss with Marquise Brown is he's pretty safe from competition for a while. We're going to talk about some of the big receivers in this draft class coming up. And then, of course, I know that you also want to talk about 2021 because there's a lot of guys that aren't declaring as well. But I think that he's safe from further competition because of what they were able to do last season. Willie Snead, I think, is still there for a year. I think they still have a bevy of tight ends that they're still going to pass to. I don't think they're going to go out and get another receiver when they drafted 2 last year. And for that reason, I still have about a season's worth of patience for Marquise Brown. But I can definitely see where you're coming from as well. Now, let's shift this to the other side of the conversation. I asked you if Corey Davis is dead. That was a joke. He's dead. He's done. We're done here. We don't have to spend any more time talking about it. I'm telling you guys, I told you guys a long time ago, A.J. Brown signing on Tennessee was the end of Corey Davis. That told you everything you need to know. But we're going to talk about A.J. Brown. People are going crazy, like nuts so crazy. I've seen OBJ straight up for A.J. Brown. I've seen people adding stuff to potential top 10 receivers for A.J. Brown right now. Last few games, A.J. Brown has been the undisputed number 1 wide receiver of the Tennessee Titans. What's happening to the undisputed number 1 wide receiver of the Tennessee Titans? Are people treating him to his talent level? And does that matter? Does that actually impact where he should be kind of looked at when it comes to the hot guys to buy in Dynasty right now? I think people have a tendency to not overvalue or overrate, but not necessarily play it all out when looking to make acquisitions in Dynasty leagues. And I think buying A.J. Brown right now is a bad move. I think you're going to have to pay an exorbitant price, and he is going to get the number 1. He's going to get number 1 attention from every team moving forward. And I just don't know if he's going to be even the same guy he was this year. I think he'll see an increase in targets, but I don't necessarily see that efficiency coming with him if he is going to be the guy from day one, because he had a little bit of time to kind of climb up under the radar this year. That's not going to happen going into next season. So I guess the question is this. People are talking about A.J. Brown going where Chris Godwin should have gone this past season, which was probably in the second, third round. Are you going to be spending your second or third round pick on A.J. Brown? I certainly won't.
No, absolutely not. You can't. The price that you have to pay to get A.J. Brown right now is just I don't believe, and I don't have the data in front of me. I just don't think it's even worth the return right now. I think it's a horrible investment because, like you said, if you have to give up Odell Beckham Jr. or let's just say I don't know, we'll take another rookie from his own class, N'Keal Harry. If you offered N'Keal Harry, you probably have to enter a first round pick along with it. N'Keal Harry and a 2020 first. N'Keal Harry and 2020 seconds. And I'm not doing that. I think A.J. Brown is a phenomenal talent. What's happened to A.J. Brown is it's playoff football and he's a rookie wide receiver. That's exactly what's going on. People are treating him like he has arrived. He is here. He's had a hell of a season, a special season, and he's been dominant at times, but he's still a rookie wide receiver learning the game. And the Tennessee offense is never going to throw the ball, 50, 60 times a game like the LA Rams do, like the Kansas City Chiefs do. So I just don't. I don't think what you're paying to acquire AJ Brown is really a wise investment, a good return. If you got him a month and a half, 2 months ago, fantastic, great job. But I'm Odell Beckham for him straight up. That's crazy.
Yeah, yeah. I think that we're seeing hype. We're just seeing how hype builds and builds and builds. And like a snowball at the bottom of the mountain, it ends up something way larger than what it should be with AJ Brown. I will say, some of the peripherals on AJ Brown look absolutely fantastic. Yards per route run is one of the most looked at, or at least one of my most looked at, most referenced pieces of data that you can find out there on wide receivers because you kind of see it directly correlates to fantasy points. Yards per route run for AJ Brown this season was 3.46. I mean, he's getting yards after the catch on every single play. He's like a Cooper Kupp for me. And if you've ever listened to this podcast before, Cooper Kupp is one of my favorite wide receivers. I think AJ Brown can be very, very good talent. I think AJ Brown can do exactly what Cooper Kupp did this year, which is finish seventh in the league quietly. That people don't necessarily rate as a top line receiver, but I do think that there's a ceiling. There's a ceiling that nobody's talking about right now. And I think people really, really need to kind of get their heads together before deciding to go ahead and blow everything on trying to acquire AJ this year. Kansas City's comeback in Tennessee. We already talked about the Tennessee Titans. We haven't really talked about the Kansas City Chiefs. If there is one player, one young player who wasn't supremely utilized this year, who I think can be an absolute problem next year, it's McCole Hardman. I spent a lot of time looking at the contracts, dissecting the contracts of the teams that I research. One of the contracts on the Kansas City Chiefs, the Sammy Watkins contract, is kind of an albatross right now when you compare it to other receivers in the NFL and you compare production to those receivers. For instance, there's a guy in Chicago right now that's catching balls from Mitchell Trubisky that makes less than Sammy Watkins does right now. And I don't think Allen Robinson deserves that. This is really an Allen Robinson podcast. This is a pro Allen Robinson podcast at this point. This doesn't even have anything to do with Sammy Watkins right now. I think something's wrong in the world if that's what we're dealing with. But that is how it's happening. That is how the cookie crumbled. Life's not fair, kids. This should tell you. But if we're going to be worried about Sammy Watkins' contract, and we're going to be worried about what looks like it was meant to be a 2-year deal turning into a 3-year deal because he technically has one more year left, but the dead cap on this next year is nothing to sniff at, meaning he can be cut or traded pretty easily. McCole Hardman steps up into the number 2 wide receiver role in Kansas City for Patrick Mahomes, who I think is going to win the Super Bowl this year. What does McCole Hardman's value look like going forward? Do you think he can be, I don't know, a Tyreek Hill light like everyone thought he was going to be initially? Or do we think that he's a little bit of kind of a one-trick pony, a deep guy that's not necessarily going to offer you anything else, that's not going to give you those consistent catches to keep your PPR hopes alive and PPR hopes happy this season?
So I am one of the bigger Mecole Hardman truthers out there, and I just went back through my Twitter feed to look at when I started talking about him opposed to the consensus, the amount of the community, and I've been over Mecole Hardman for a very long time.
I love
And
McCole
it's
Hardman.
funny, it's funny. This is only his 3rd year playing wide receiver. He started out as a defensive back at the University of Georgia. Then they converted him to wide receiver. So he is still learning the position. Now, I think one of his best traits is absolutely running deep, catching deep passes, but he's so much more than that. He can catch the slant and take that to the house. I like receivers that are sort of, they give you ability in the return game. That's how Tyreek Hill got his start. He was a punt
Tyler
returner, a kick
Lockett.
returner. Tyler Lockett the same way, which gives you sort of an opportunity to get on the field. And I know it sounds crazy, but to gain confidence. Okay, I can play.
Tebow Samuel, too.
Absolutely, I can show the coaches that you need to get me the doggone ball. So I think Tyreek Hill, he is an outlier of all outliers, right? Because even in PPR formats, he gets enough volume to sort of sustain if he doesn't get a deep bomb here or there. You know, he's
Which
more of
is
a
crazy
complete,
for deep threat receivers.
and I don't think McCole Hardman is that. What I think is he's a better version, and he's definitely a little bit smaller, but a better version of what Robbie Anderson is. I think there are some weeks that he can go out there and get you 8, 9 catches, but you really don't want to rely on that. But the 5 or 6 grabs that he can potentially get as a wide receiver too in that offense, he's going to have at least 1 or 2 opportunities every game to take a slant to the house, to take a bubble screen to the house, still involved in the punt return game. And he hadn't really done anything in the past couple of games. So now's the time to probably put out. You probably can acquire McCole Hardman. You get more return on that investment than yours for AJ Brown right now at this point in time. So I would say now might be the time to go get Hardman.
I'm right there with you. I've been trying to acquire Hardman ever since I saw the Tyreek Hill contract. Everything that you said about Hardman is kind of the same way that I assess him. I don't think he can be Tyreek Hill. I don't think he can be that volume big play threat, which again is just don't compare that to anything. But I do think that he's going to step into that wide receiver 2 role, and Kansas City's not going to have to worry about wide receivers for a while. I think they're really set with McCole, with Tyreek now locked up for the next few years. So I think they're pretty good to go going forward.
I'm sending an offer out for McCole Hardman in my home league right now, literally on the pod. I was just like, I sold myself. I sold myself.
There we go.
I'm not lying, am I? I got sweeper open down. I'm about to
do it. Hey,
I'm
man.
about to do it, man.
But that's always what I'm talking about. It pays to be mindful of 2 things: of time and of situation. Those are the things I always talk about that people overlook. Talent is talent. Talent is great. If talent doesn't get an opportunity to play, talent doesn't matter. And I think people forget that often when we look at dynasty players as a whole. But I think a guy like McCole Hardman right now, if you're looking for the most bang for your buck, I'm not saying he's better. I'm not even saying he's on A.J. Brown's level, because I think A.J. Brown is a volume receiver. And for me, those volume receivers are the ones that, you can put out every week. I think what we've seen over the past couple of weeks is, like you said, playoff football. I think he'll be back to catching about 6 balls a game going into next season. But that said, I really do think that McCole Hardman is the guy that's going under the radar right now that I think you should be really spending a lot of your money on. Some people think that it's not either of those two, and that it's Deontay Johnson out in Pittsburgh, that he's kind of the number 2 that is exciting, that's going to be new, that's going to provide something different, that has shown he can hang in the NFL this season. I'm worried about Ben Roethlisberger. I don't know if he's coming back. If that doesn't happen, I mean, they don't have any more draft picks until like 2,572. So I don't know what they're going to do at quarterback if he doesn't return. And even if he returns, he was on the downswing of his career just a couple of seasons ago. I think a lot of people don't kind of put 2 and 2 together. Guys, AB is crazy. I understand. He also helped that offense a huge amount. And even Juju Smith-Schuster, of all people, will tell you. But let's go to the next game. San Francisco beats Minnesota. Okay, so now this personally hurts me. I don't understand why this continues to happen. I've been talking about it all season. But I'm personally offended by the usage of Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen. Both of those contracts are in the top 10 contracts of wide receivers in the NFL. Both of them. And they are barely used. Stephon Diggs, I don't know how many targets he got. He was able to get, I think, a couple of catches, one of them deep for a touchdown. Adam Thielen got 50 yards, I think, on 5 catches. Dalvin Cook was supposed to run over who again? Run over the best defensive line in football in San Francisco. That was how they thought they were going to win that game. Surprisingly, it didn't work. I don't know what to do with these guys, because this kind of comes back to the talent situation thing I was just talking about, and it's backfired on me completely. I love Stephon Diggs. I think Stephon Diggs has the ability to be a top 5 wide receiver year in, year out. I think Stephon Diggs can be a deep threat. I think Stephon Diggs can be a volume receiver. I think everything that you would want in a modern wide receiver right now, Stephon Diggs can do. I also don't know if he's ever going to get the opportunity to do that, because he's tied to that team for so long now with that deal that they can't even get rid of him, I think, until 2023 at the absolute earliest. Adam Thielen's still there on the other side. Irv Smith, I think, is kind of going to start to come up and get some targets for himself. Kyle Rudolph is going to catch a touchdown from nowhere every now and then. And then if you're going to have Dalvin Cook doing Dalvin Cook things, then I just don't know what you do. The only situation that I see both Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen having huge seasons over again is if the same thing that kind of led them to having it the first time, which is a Dalvin Cook injury. I think that we are going to have a lot more to say about this in about a year's time because that's when Dalvin Cook's contract is up, and that's when you have to decide if you want to make a heavily injured player one of the highest paid players at his position in the NFL. But between now and then, I mean, are we buying Stephon Diggs? Are we buying Adam Thielen at maybe an age discount right now? Or are we just kind of keeping our money, looking at the other stores down the line and just hoping that, hey, we can find a bargain somewhere?
Stephon Diggs had over 1,100 receiving yards this year and 94 targets. 94 targets is what he had. I mean, that is I don't have the data in front of me, but I wonder if he exceeded expectation for the amount of volume that he got. I don't think you're going to be able to get what you want for Diggs if you try to sell him. I don't think, because if you have Diggs, you believe in the talent, like you said, you believe in the talent. You believe that he could be a top 5 wide receiver, that he could be a deep threat and an underneath target. So you're not going to sell him at a discount. You're going to want top dollar for it. And I know I wouldn't be willing to pay for him. I am very concerned about Adam Thielen, and I'm a huge Adam Thielen fan. But maybe he had a down season, but he's going to be in next year. What is his age? 30?
31.
Age 30 or 31 season? I mean, what are you buying him for? Or what are you selling him for? Would you be comfortable taking a 2022nd, a 2023rd for Adam Thielen? I'm not giving you a first. Don't even I'd laugh you out of the trade room. There's no way I'm giving you a first round pick for him. So I think if you have these guys, you're either trying to package them up to move them, or you're just holding and hoping that whomever the offensive coordinator is in Minnesota utilizes them more, because it really makes no sense. I don't get it. I don't get it. But Cousins didn't throw the ball, and you got Irv Smith, like you said. I don't know. That's a tough one.
I'm going to kind of switch this, talk about the Minnesota wide receivers question, over to our new addition over here. One of the baddest men in fantasy football. We have the Outhouse, Dynasty Outhouse, Rush Fisher, joining us to go ahead and talk about some of the big rookies that are going to be making an impact next season. But before we get into that chat, same question that I just gave to Ray. Mr. Russ, what are you doing with Stephon Diggs? What are you doing with Adam Thielen?
Okay. Well, yeah, I love me some Stephon Diggs. He is so good, but exactly what Ray just said. You are never going to get anything near what he can be worth and what he should be worth. So he is an absolute hold. Now, while you shouldn't be able to really get anything for Thielen these days, I just pulled off Adam Thielen for Preston Williams and a 21 first and second. Right? I mean, this was also coming off his last game, not this week. It was just after last week, after he did something, which is nice. But I still think Thielen being a solid producer is in people's heads, regardless of what that offense has turned into. And Diggs is the boom and bust guy, which means if you have Thielen, do anything you can to get rid of him, because I don't care that he started later. I don't care about anything else. He's 31-ish. He has foot issues and back issues. And while, yes, I'm not going to deny the fact that he is a very good football player, just fantasy-wise, that doesn't smell good to me. So if I can still get anything near what the hell I got for him, which, if whoever should right now be remain nameless is listening, sorry, bro, go get what you can. But for Stephon Diggs, it's weird because I love him. I'm not selling him because you can't get what it's worth for him, but I'm too afraid to buy him because it doesn't matter. Like, yeah, their OC is gone, but you know what they want to do. They're not going to change now. Like, they got rid of the guy who wanted to pass the ball too much. So, I mean, I think with Diggs, you hold on to him and hope he's your third wide receiver on your team, so you can survive the 6-point games, but love the 50-point games.
If you're Mike Zimmer, is there ever a scenario where you think maybe running is the option? Like maybe if you're facing the San Francisco 49ers and you need to actually score some points and not get your quarterback killed, is there
Really,
a,
you're
a
asking a
chance?
Seahawks fan who just sat through what we sat through, where it took until the start of the fourth quarter for Brian Schottenheimer to be like, all right, you know what? Maybe we give the ball to one of the best quarterbacks in the league. So, no, I mean, yes, we've seen the fact that Kirk Cousins has in fact thrown the ball in negative game scripts, but I think it's going to come to that. I don't think they're going to say, hey, we're playing this good defense, let's just start throwing the ball. I think they're going to have to be down substantially before they just let Kirk Cousins go nuts. Because let's face it, Kirk Cousins isn't that great. So it's not like we can say, let's give the ball to Russell Wilson. They're saying, let's give the ball to Kirk Cousins. Again, it would be nice. I don't see it happening.
Now, one final point on this. I was talking to Ray just before you hopped on here. Is this a different thing? Is this a whole new world if I don't want to say it, but oft injured Dalvin Cook isn't necessarily on that team anymore? Dalvin Cook is going into, I believe, the last year of his contract this next season. We've already seen some injuries from Dalvin Cook. He doesn't have a fifth-year extension because he wasn't picked in the first round, I don't believe, unless anybody can correct me. So he has 4 years on his contract. They're going to have to make a decision probably this offseason on what to do with Dalvin Cook. Now, let's talk about it. Are they going to give Dalvin Cook all the money in the world? Not what you would do, but what they're going to do. And if they don't, if maybe they decide that, hey, this isn't in the best interest of our club, is there a chance that maybe that scheme becomes more pass heavy?
I mean, probably not. I clearly, yes. If they don't have the personnel to do what they want to do, I guess that again doesn't stop the Seahawks from trying. But you got to figure Dalvin Cook is a big reason why they do what they do. That dude's very good at running the ball, so you give him the ball. But I mean, that's always the kind of coach he was anyway. So while it's not like Madison or Boone coming in is the same thing, I still think you're not going to become a pass-heavy offense. It may get more towards being even, but I mean, I don't think this is turning into a passing team, even if Dalvin Cook decided to retire tomorrow.
Now, this next transition, I'm sorry, might hurt you a little bit personally there, Russ. I had the Packers beating Seattle actually on the sheet way before the game ended.
Wow, that is a jerk move.
I love Seattle. I love a lot of players in Seattle. Tyler Lockett, is one of my boys. I'm concerned about that offense. I'm concerned about the state of that offense. I'm concerned about Pete Carroll. I'm really heavily concerned about what they're going to do moving forward with their assets, because now it looks like they're going to start next season with 2 banged up running backs. So is there a guy or two on the Seattle Seahawks that maybe people aren't necessarily overlooking but just aren't paying enough attention to that could be a thing next year? Is Hollister going to keep his job when Will Dissly comes back, or is this kind of just one of those situations where these guys are what they are? They're going to be boom bust, and you're just going to kind of take it or leave it.
Yeah, they are what they are. The only thing that will change what they are is if Carroll and Schottenheimer go, which honestly, I've 2 years ready for Carroll to kind of go. I mean, once the Legion of Boom went away, he just didn't fit anymore. It worked. It was amazing. Don't get me wrong. It literally changed the NFL. It changed the way people looked at secondaries, but it fell apart. The way he built his teams didn't work anymore, but their team was too good. Like, Russell Wilson is too good. Like, he won't let this man just get fired. Like, that's what they need. Like, it's funny. Like, this game ended and my wife's just like kind of sorry bro'd me.
I can't believe they punted. I'm sitting there like with the punt. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't understand that either. But we're not gonna, like, unless you want like the next half hour to be about that game, we're just gonna not let that start. And she's like, at least they keep making the playoffs. And I'm like, I kind of wish they wouldn't. Just let them be bad. Let there be change. I think that team needs an overhaul, clearly not including Russell Wilson, Tyler Lockett, and DK Metcalf. The rest of that team can just kind of go.
So
And the Griffin brothers. I really like the Griffin brothers.
I've got 3 points to what Russ just said, and it fits, and I'll be really brief. One, it is time for a new voice, new direction. I work at a university, and one of our longtime basketball coaches, coached for 20-something years, younger guy, and he told me that the difference in college sports, the reason why you can have these coaches hang around for 15, 20, 30 years is you're getting new kids in every year. Every 2 years, you've got a new group coming in, so you can continue to relay the same message over and over again, and it's like brand new. But when you've got these long tenured head coaches in the NFL, unless you're winning a Super Bowl every other year like the Patriots, at some point that message just falls on deaf ears. And like Russ said, that team is completely different now. Like, I'm not a Seahawks fan. My dad lives in Seattle. I just watch football like everybody else. I don't know what the identity is offensively. Is it a running team? Do they want to throw the ball intermediate? Is it a deep play? I watch them offensively and defensively, and I just have no clue what the team philosophy is. So I think there are some great core pieces there. What they're going to do with the tight end, I don't know. Does it even matter? They had Jimmy Graham a couple of years ago, and it seemed like he didn't matter either. So I don't know what the team identity for Seattle is, but I do know it's time for a change. It's time for a new direction. And the last point, keep on just getting to the playoffs is almost like in Dynasty. We talk about being in the middle of the pack is never good. You either want to be really bad so you can get draft capital and rebuild, or you want to legitimately be contending. And right now, the Seahawks are just in the middle of the pack in Dynasty. They're not good enough to win it, but they're not bad enough to get a high draft pick. So something has to change.
I think the same can kind of be said of the stars on the Seahawks, of DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, at least when looking at Dynasty leagues. I think they're good enough to get it done. Maybe not good enough to be that piece on your team that's going to put you over the top. I love Tyler Lockett. Tyler Lockett and Cooper Kupp and Tyler Boyd are the three guys that I've said a million times on this podcast. But I've traded him multiple leagues. And it kind of hurts my soul a little bit. But at the same time, when looking at the situation, when looking at what the actual volume is available to these receivers and anticipating that Disley is going to come back and he's going to get his same amount of targets, and Ursua still hasn't been used. They still have a few guys on the team that aren't really integrated yet. I don't see a massive ceiling for either DK Metcalf or Tyler Lockett. I think DK is a different type of receiver. I think that DK is going to have one of those 1,200 yards, 14 touchdown seasons. I don't know if it's going to be consistent, but beyond that, I just don't know if the volume is where it needs to be to really feel comfortable paying what you're going to have to pay to get either a DK Metcalf or a Tyler Lockett. Is there a deal that you can dream up that you think would be accepted, that you'd be willing to move for these guys, or are you kind of in the same situation as me where it's kind of hold or bust?
I'd pay for DK before I pay for Lockett right now, mostly because, like you said, volume's not really a thing, but it seemed like as the season went on, when it came to third down, DK was the guy that Russell Wilson was going to. And that's really honestly the volume you will get in this specific offense, assuming nothing changes into next year, because why would they change? Because let's face it, run on first, run on second, throw on third. I mean, we escaped Darrell Bevel just to go back to Darrell Bevel. Like, it's awful. I hate it. But of course, in Detroit, Stafford's throwing the ball like crazy. Just, can we talk about the different team? Like, why are you doing this to me now? Like, I purposely waited a little bit after the game ended. And you're doing this to me right here.
But, well, we can talk about the Green Bay Packers. You want to talk about that?
Man, if I could slap you across the country, I'd do it right now.
Before we completely get off the Packers, though, we do need to at least address Aaron Jones. We need to talk about why Devontae Adams
is just so damn good.
Still a top 3 dynasty wide receiver, and what we're going to be doing when we're coming to value these guys moving forward. I think what's been said about Aaron Rodgers in terms of Aaron Rodgers not being the same dude is true. I think we've all kind of seen that play out. I also think what's been said about about Aaron Jones in terms of his production being completely unsustainable because it's all touchdowns is also true. I do think that he is a very, very good running back. I do think that that team isn't necessarily set up for the running back to be the focal point of that team, which is understandable because you have a guy with the personality of Aaron Rodgers. I think I'd still be kind of going out there to buy Devontae Adams just because, number one, I'm always buying wide receivers in Dynasty. Wide receivers age well in Dynasty, and I think he's the type of player that can do that. But I have some reservations on Aaron Jones. In fact, so much so that I'd probably be willing to sell Aaron Jones if I could get the right price for him, if somebody's kind of just looking at end of year season rankings when it comes to this player. What are your thoughts, Ray, on the Green Bay Packers, Devontae Adams, Aaron Jones specifically, and if there's anybody else on that offense that you're even willing to take a shot on?
I'll be quick with Adams. He's a stud. I mean, top 3 dynasty wide receiver. I know there was an opportunity to buy low on him this year when he missed 4 games. There's an opportunity to sort of try to send some offers out there. Foot injury scares people off, but I mean, he's a stud. He's a top 5. Michael Thomas, DeAndre Hopkins, Devontae Adams, however you want to rank those players. He's fantastic. He's going to be, age 27 season next year. So
which is right in his prime. Yeah.
Yeah, you're prime. And even he's one of those receivers where his game is going to age well. Aaron Jones is sort of – I like Aaron Jones. I like Aaron Jones a lot. At this point in time, the draft capital, who cares that he was a 5th-round pick? He's proven that he can be a stud in the NFL. But the same thing you said about Dalvin Cook, he's a 5th-round pick. So I believe the contract situation, they've got to take care of that this offseason, or he's either going to hold out or they're going to try to – I don't think they would franchise him. But I don't know if they pay him. I think he had a fantastic year. They may let him, if you want to test the market. I don't know. I'm not paying Aaron Jones because what kind of contract are you going to have to give him? A Jerick McKinnon type deal? I'm sure he'd want more than that, but I'm not paying him like a top 5 running back in the NFL. I don't know about that one. That one's a tough call. And in Dynasty, I probably can't pay the cost to go get them. So if you have them, you hold them, you try to package them to maybe get a high pick and a player. I don't really, Russ, I'd be interested to hear what you think, because I don't really know what you do with that.
Real quick on Adams, I know the difference between wide receiver 2 and 3 really makes absolutely no difference whatsoever. But I was watching this game tonight just thinking Devontae Adams is probably the wide receiver 2. I think you still have Michael Thomas in 1. And I think the usage DeAndre Hopkins got this year was ridiculously concerning, unless the Texans spend every single pick on offensive linemen and 1 on a running back. I don't see it changing all that much. So, and man, yeah, Adams is just so damn good. But yeah, the difference between 2 and 3 is just pretty much nitpicking at this point. But Aaron Jones, I think they will pay him. Green Bay is a team of their guys. They like homegrown guys. I don't think you'll have to pay him that much. I think it's pretty obvious that they split the backfield. I think it's a little obvious. They have been running a lot more than they used to. They use the running game a lot more than they used to need to. It worked out very much in Aaron Jones's favor that he scored 37 touchdowns this year, because he'll be able to say, look what I did on the, this restricted touches you gave me, get that Jamal guy out of here and we'll see, I'll show you what I can do. I think he stays. I think he gets not quite Lev Bell money or anything like that. He's not going to get something maybe he'll hit 10 million, that. Not awesome, but better than the Jerick McKinnon kind of deal. I guess I also have no idea what their cap's like and who else they have to pay, so this is just pretty much vacuum. But dynasty wise, man, it's tough. I was bored. I have him in Trade Addict 6 and I was just sending trades out because why not? And I sent him to Brian, who I know is one of the charter members of the Aaron Jones fan club, for a mid, and I think it was the 104 and the 110, something like that. And he, again, loving Aaron Jones, said it was a good deal, just didn't really work for his team right there. So I still think you can get a decent haul for Aaron Jones. ADP, he is still going to stay high. He is going to go through this offseason as a top 10 running back. Just, being in the playoffs still, being in everyone's minds. He's still scoring touchdowns. He's going to keep his value. The only thing that will kill his value is something weird happening in the offseason, another drug charge, them coming out and saying they're moving on from him, next year. Like something really weird has to happen for him to lose his value. He is worth a very early first or something like I sent out, a mid and a late. I would I do it just to get him off my team? No. If you're like me and just like sending things out because you're bored, sure, why not? It's worth it.
Yeah, I think that you're right on the money with Aaron Jones. Green Bay Packers are right in the middle of kind of everyone when it comes to cap space next year, so they should have no problem retaining Aaron Jones. I do think they still do need to pay a few guys on defense, but they have most of the guys locked up because the big performers for them on defense, they actually got as free agents last season, those two DNs. So they're pretty set for a little while. So I think Aaron Jones is going to be sitting pretty for a little while there. But let's now go into this week's 5-point inspection, and let's switch gears here, talking about some guys that you might not know as well, some guys that I certainly don't know as well, some guys that I specifically brought Ray on the podcast to talk about. We're going to talk about some of the rookies that are coming out this season that are going to be impacting Dynasty teams very, very soon. Really soon, if you're like me and have your drafts a little bit early in most of your leagues. But let's, before we get to the rookies, talk about some rookie landing spots. What are ideal circumstances? Let's not talk about the Chiefs running back position. I don't want to hear it. I know it's a great spot. Damian Williams might also be there next year. We have no idea. So Chiefs are out of this. If we can't talk about the Chiefs, is there a team or two out there that you are just salivating, looking at their roster right now thinking, okay, this is going to be a big draft for them if they do it right. And if they do it right, we're going to have a lot of opportunity really, really early for really young players.
I think I've got three. All right. And the first one is the Miami Dolphins. I think I know it's not the sexy name. It's not Kansas City. It's not Indianapolis. But I think if the Dolphins invest high draft capital in one of these running backs, that cements that player as being the guy. And at the running back position, you want volume. And if you're getting the volume, then you're inevitably, unless you're Kalen Balazs, you're going to score points. You're going to produce. So I think Miami, and to be honest, I don't know if it was Ryan Fitzpatrick, if it was Brian Flores, but that team played really hard. Like, I liked what I saw out of Miami late in the season when they had every reason to fold because it looked like they were clearly tanking, but they played too hard to actually accomplish that. So I think Miami, volume-based opportunity, that's a good landing spot for the type of talent that's in this class. I think the Houston Texans, they need a running back. They need a lot of things, but if you can get, I can name 7 or 8 backs. If they land in Houston, that's going to rival, depending on the back, that's going to rival that Kansas City potential landing spot or any of that. I think they're in need of a back. Carlos Hyde filled in admirably, but he's volume. I mean, he got the ball, so he was able to produce. But you get a legitimate back there with Deshaun Watson and DeAndre Hopkins and Will Fuller and Kenny Stills. That changes that offense, and maybe a new new head coach as well. Maybe that would help. And then my sort of dream of all dreams landing spot outside of KC would be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think Tampa Bay with Bruce Arians, he tried desperately to find his David Johnson. It seemed like he wanted Ronald Jones, and then as soon as he did anything, missed the blitz pickup, dropped the ball, coughed wrong, he was on the bench for Peyton Barber, who's not good. So if you're telling me that he can get a legitimate running back there to tell Jameis, listen, if Evans isn't open, if Godwin isn't open, you check it down every time. I don't care if we have to do 20 checkdowns in a row, Phillip Rivers, Austin Eckler style, you throw it to the doggone running back. And if Tampa Bay invests 3rd round or higher draft capital, I don't care what the running back is, they're moving up in my draft board. So Miami, Houston, and Tampa Bay would be 3 outside of the sort of usual suspects.
See, you sort of almost left an opening for the team. I kind of want to take a dynamic running back. Like, what if Bruce Arians gets David Johnson? Imagine one of these guys in Arizona. Like, oh man, like the breakaway speed of Etienne in that offense is just like drool worthy. I think the Seahawks have to draft a running back. Maybe not early, but I mean, Carson, like,
that's where I was going, because Penny has an additional tear with the ACL, so
more than
he's
an average ACL.
Yeah,
exactly. So, and that's coming from Pete Carroll. So he's dead. He's gone. Like, we're never going to hear from him again.
He may actually have lost his leg.
And then Carson
legit.
has the hip injury.
Tell us, right?
But yeah, the running back in Seattle thing is definitely something that I'm on board with.
Yeah.
And it's funny. I made the joke. They're drooling over AJ Dillon right now. They want some 250-pound dude, and it's going to break my heart when they take him in the first, because that's just what they're going to do.
I think that is the most voluminous role.
What about Pitt? I've heard some people talk about the Steelers. I don't know if they would do that, but first, they don't have a first, or do they have? No,
they don't have a first. They do have a second, I believe.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd have to check.
I don't know. I like James Conner. I really like James Conner a lot.
I just want to be healthy.
I like when he plays. I like him a lot. But when he plays, right? When he plays.
Yes.
And that's the issue with that team. After the amount of injuries that they've had to kind of go through or deal with this season, they probably want more of a sure thing at a few important positions to kind of keep their offense rolling. Because, I mean, everybody used to make fun of Mike Tomlin. I don't think this is going to continue anymore, because everybody used to say that Mike Tomlin is the most fireable coach in the NFL season after season because of all the talent that he had and what he wasn't able to do with that talent. And we saw that this year he was able to kind of completely turn that around with very limited talent. They almost got to the playoffs. I think this can happen again, but we were just talking about Ben Roethlisberger, not necessarily knowing if he's going to come back, not knowing if he's going to come back and still be good. We have to kind of think that front office, kind of like Seattle's front office, I mean, they want plan Bs for their plan Bs at this point.
What about Jacksonville?
I think Jacksonville would be a really, really interesting place for two things.
If anything, just a receiving back, right?
Yeah, a receiving back, a wide receiver, or I would say, I don't even know how to say this guy's name. He's a tight end, Albert something with an O.
Oh, just leave it.
I think that he'd be a really, really good addition there as well if Josh Oliver doesn't turn into what we thought that Josh Oliver would be. But yeah, I think we've kind of covered some of the most enticing spots here when it comes to looking at this from the perspective of an NFL team and from the perspective of a dynasty player who's trying to identify a situation that's going to result in a lot of touches for his or her player. Let's talk about those players themselves. I mean, everybody kind of has Jalen Reagor is pretty high. People have I am messing this up. Hold on.
Jumping topics. I mean, you had a perfect transition into the tight ends, which was the next thing on your list, and you just blew it.
No, I accidentally opened up another window here, and it started playing, and it was completely messing this up. Sorry.
Man, I was like impressed with the masterfulness that was about to happen.
Yeah,
and then you started talking about Jalen Reagor. I'm like, no, what do you do? What do you do?
We can talk about Reagor. Let's go.
All right, going in. So everybody's going to talk about Jalen Reagor. Everyone's going to talk about Tyler Johnson. Everyone's going to talk about Henry Ruggs. I mean, are there some of these guys in this class that maybe aren't getting the type of hype that they deserve? Like, we have these guys kind of at the top, or at least most recently made big plays that kind of got people excited. The reason I even bring up some of these wide receivers, because I know that, Ray, you have really interesting perspectives on what the NFL specifically is going to think about Ruggs versus how Ruggs should be ranked. So let's talk about Ruggs. Let's talk about Rieger. Let's talk about Johnson. Let's talk about any of the guys that play receiver that are announced that they're coming out this season. And let's talk about who we think is going to be one of the safest plays, at least in terms of a profile, coming into the NFL for the 2020 season. Who can have an A.J. Brown-like impact?
I think there are a couple of guys, but if you really just want to play it safe, and you don't want to take a lot of risk, you're worried about whatever it is. I think your two safe plays are CeeDee Lamb and Jerry Jeudy. I think those are your two safe plays. I personally have CeeDee Lamb ranked a little bit higher than Jerry Jeudy. Well, actually, quite a bit higher because Jerry Judy's my third wide receiver. He's a tier 1 guy for me, but I have him ranked third. But I think CeeDee Lamb is a lot like, and I'm not kidding. And I'm sorry, Russ, but when Devontae Adams caught that ball and cut back and ran it to the end zone, I was thinking,
I saw your tweet, man.
I was thinking, first of all, he doesn't look that fast. And then he looked a lot like CeeDee Lamb, and that's how CeeDee Lamb plays. I've made the joke that he is the fastest, not that fast guy in college football. Every time CeeDee Lamb catches the ball, I'm thinking he's really not that fast, but then he's never caught. He's running away from defenders, and he really reminds me of Devontae Adams. Like that's first of all, I don't like comping high end ceiling level comps. It's fun to do, but the chances of these guys actually hitting that ceiling are very slim. But if I had to put one on there, it would be CeeDee Lamb to Devontae Adams. So I think that's a safe play. I don't care where CeeDee Lamb ends up. I've seen Arizona. That'd be really dope to get him back with Kyler Murray. It seems like that would be the wrong decision from an organization with the Cardinals, but probably one that I can see Cliff Kingsbury going with. But I think he's team dependent. Whatever team he lands on, I think he's going to be awesome sooner rather than later, a la A.J. Brown. And then Jerry Jeudy. A lot of people want to call him generational and the best thing since Amari Cooper. First and foremost, if there's any generational player in this draft, it's defensive end Chase Young. I don't think there's any offensive skill position in this class that's generational. Like none
even the quarterbacks?
I don't think any of them are generational. I think, and Jesse Reeves and I had this conversation the other day, a generational talent to me is Saquon Barkley. I didn't have to see any number. When I saw Saquon Barkley play, I said that guy's going to be good at the next level. He's just different than everybody else. But then there are players who can have a generational type impact for your team. I think Joe Burrow can have that type of impact for a team. I think Tua can have a generational impact to elevate his team to do great things in the NFL. But Joe Burrow is not a generational talent. He doesn't have the best arm in this class. He may not be the most accurate, but he's the best complete package there is at quarterback for a lot. Tua is fantastic. The first time I saw him throw the ball when he stepped on the field at Alabama, I legitimately said he's the number 1 pick in 2 years. Like this guy's going to be the number 1 draft pick. And he probably very well could have been had he not been injured. But when you're looking at those wide receivers, I think those are your two safe plays. But there are a lot of guys deeper down the line. Michael Pittman Jr., Devin Duvernay, Antonio Gandy Golden, Isaiah Hodgins. There are so many other deeper level talents that I think could hit and smash the next level.
Is there a guy that you don't really agree with consensus there, Russ?
Everything I know about Devi, I learned from that guy anyway. So, I mean, I don't really have that much to say in this conversation. It was funny. Like he was going on about his wide receivers, and if he didn't bring up Devin Duvernay, it's just ridiculous because like I'm gonna end up drafting this guy 101 with the amount of love Ray shows Big Play Duvernay. It's big ridiculous.
I mean, he's the guy out of Texas, right? He just has ridiculous amounts of speed. It's kind of comical. But I mean, is he even faster than the fastest guy in this class? Is he faster than Rieger?
It's going to be fun. And I've asked Jalen himself. I said, dude, I've heard Henry Ruggs is faster than you, Chuba Hubbard. And he told me flat out, there's nobody in this draft class faster than him, and I'll see come the combine. So
have they ever done at the combine like multiple people doing the 40 at once? I want that.
No, that would be awesome if they just did the
just racing each other.
There's going to be we're going to see some impressive times. Even if we don't see John Ross levels of speed, I think this year when we walk away from the combine, it's already ugly on Twitter now, but wait until all those times come out and then people are really stumping for their guy because I think it's going to be an absolute track meet this year.
Running backs. Clyde
No, wait,
Edwards-Helaire is the
hold on, real
late.
quick. The one guy that hasn't been brought up yet that I want to bring up because I am team big Clemson wide receivers. I love me T. Higgins. I think he
Same.
is safe, probably. Yeah. Just because if you have a kind of quarterback that's willing to use big receivers, unlike Dak, that likes the opening, that likes the timing, if you have a guy that's willing to YOLO him the ball, I think he's super safe because he'll be able to catch everything.
I love T. Higgins. Love T. Higgins.
So first round to Chicago is what you're saying?
Come on, leave Allen Robinson alone.
Oh man. All right, so running backs. Moving on to running backs. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is obviously the late riser here. His name has kind of been all over social media, partly because of you, Ray. I've seen a lot of your posts on him. But we're seeing Clyde Edwards-Helaire jump up draft boards. Obviously, J.K. Dobbins is still at the top of everybody's draft board. You still have the huge hitters at running back. If there's anything that you're looking for in this specific draft class on a dynasty team, it is the ability to revamp that running back position. But is there a guy maybe outside of Helaire and the top guys in that range that could make a huge impact if they get an opportunity or can even challenge for an opportunity potentially in training camp?
I don't know if this player is going to challenge for a starter opportunity in training camp, but I can definitely see him coming in as a number 2 high end backup. And it's somebody that you're going to be able to get probably outside of the top 15 right now. I think he's going to perform very well at the combine, but it's a guy out of Appalachian State named Darrington Evans. And that's a name you need to remember. He's 5'11", 200 pounds. He's had back-to-back seasons with over 1,100 rushing yards. I know it's the Sun Belt Conference, but 18 touchdowns this past season. He's good. He's really good. And I'm starting to see more and more draft people talking about this kid on Twitter. And I think that with a strong pre-draft, pre-combine process, he's somebody that's going to get drafted. Probably, if I had to be realistic, 5th round. I can see him going in that Aaron Jones round range. But if he gets an opportunity to play behind a running back a la Dalvin Cook and Alexander Madison, Darrington Evans, just look up some of the highlights on this guy from Appalachian State. He's rocked up. He's fast. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. And he's somebody that you can probably get late 4th or that first round of waivers after your dynasty rookie drafts and just stash him away. I'm pretty confident that he's going to open the season. If he isn't the backup right away, it won't take long for a coaching staff to put him in that number 2 role. And in dynasty, those number 2 running backs are very, very, very valuable, especially if they land in the right situation. So Darrington Evans is somebody that a lot of people have never even heard his name. The only thing they know about Appalachian State is the victory over Michigan like 20 years ago, and that's about it. So check out this kid. He's really good.
Darrington Evans. Name I did not expect to hear. All right, so let's hear about Travis Etienne. Exactly. What do you want to tell me about Travis Etienne, Russ?
Fast.
He's fast. He's good. Get the ball, and there's always a chance he's bringing it to the end zone. I know Houston doesn't throw the ball to the backfield a lot, but please just put that kid on Houston. I
can see that.
I want that. Yeah. And then they could keep Hyde and let him, plod the ball every once in a while. That's the only name I want to bring up, and I want him to be awesome because I'm in 2 Devy leagues and I have him in both. People are just forgetting about Eno Benjamin. Not to say he's great or anything, but people used to think he was, and not much has changed in half a season. So I don't know necessarily if he's the specific small kind of situational player. That's the word I could think of. But I think on a team where it's not, if he's not behind Zeke, he'll have a chance, he'll get noticed, and he'll start getting on the field.
Now, there's 2 that we haven't quite gone over, I guess, because we were going over some of the guys that maybe you wouldn't know, but Cam Akers definitely had a lot of buzz about him back in 2019, and then or back in 2018, and the buzz seemed to go away this season and to not quite be the same this season. Do we think Cam Akers still has the talent to show that he was just stuck behind an awful, horrible, terrible offensive line in college, and that he can still be a good running back in the NFL, or has he kind of been exposed by seeing maybe some of the same looks that he will in the NFL, because it's just harder to be a good player in the NFL when everyone is as good as you?
Yes. Next question.
Yeah, listen, it's you to say his line was bad is an understatement. Like, it legitimately was the worst offensive line from Football Outsiders. I mean, they had one of the worst offensive lines in college football, and when you watch the tape, I'm more impressed that he was able to rush for over 1,100 yards this year behind that offensive line. He was the number 3 overall player out of his recruiting class in 2017. He can do it all. To me, he has the highest overall ceiling of any of these running backs. He's fast, he's physical, he can catch the ball out of the backfield, he's solid in pass protection. And if he had an average offensive line, I think we would have been talking about Cam Akers as right up there with DeAndre Swift and Jonathan Taylor and Travis Etienne. For me, he's very high. I haven't released my final rankings yet, but he's going to be a lot higher and rated over some of the bigger names that we hear about when we're talking about this 2020 class. I think Akers is one-on-one. If he lands in any of those positions that we talked about earlier, if he lands in Tampa Bay, if he lands in Kansas City, if he lands in, one of those teams like that, he's going to be my probably top-rated running back. I'm super high on
Over
Cam Akers.
Swift. Over Swift.
If Akers, if was a fifth, if Akers lands in Kansas City, I'm taking him one-on-one. I'm like flat out. There's no doubt in my mind. I don't care where DeAndre Swift goes. I'm taking Cam Akers number 1.
Now,
I don't have any number 1 picks, but I would.
Is there somebody in this top area of the draft at the running back position that you think is kind of not in the right place, that shouldn't be ranked where they are, that shouldn't have the following they have right now, that's going to be overdrafted come draft season?
I don't know if I'd say any of them would be overdrafted, because I think the value of running backs in the rookie drafts are probably appropriately placed. But a guy that I'm not all the way as in on as a lot of other people is J.K. Dobbins. I think he's a very good running back. I'm sorry. I think he's a very good running back.
People think he's better than Zeke.
Away from Zeke. No. We don't even need to go there. I think he's a very good running back. I think he does everything good. Everything. Catch the ball good. Runs the ball between tackles good. He's got good speed. He's got good agility. He's got good power. For me, draft capital and landing spot's going to be huge for me with J.K. Dobbins. He is not team, like, it doesn't matter. Like, I don't care what team he landed. Like Swift, I really wouldn't care what team he landed on. Akers is, Etienne, Taylor. Dobbins, I'm really paying attention to that. If he lands in Jacksonville, if he ends up in one of those spots, then I'll reevaluate. But I'm just not all in on J.K. Dobbins like some other people.
All right, you guys heard it from the best. We are now going to switch gears just a little bit, and we're going to go into some of the tight ends in this class. Albert Okwuegbunam, I think is how you say that. It's probably really wrong, and I feel bad because I think he's Nigerian, so my people. But can we compare any of these guys to the tight ends that we saw come out last year? Iowa's duo of the Font and Hawkinson. Is there a talent can even be brought up in the same conversation as those guys, or even the guys before them that came with all those running backs in the draft a couple years ago?
No. Next question.
I was going to say, how much time do we budget for this question? Because we can move on to the next. No, not really interested. I probably wouldn't draft any of them in a 4-round, 1 quarterback PPR league. I wouldn't draft any of them. I'd wait until the waivers and grab somebody off waivers. And now if one of them hit, if I miss, and Albert O or Hunter Bryant are Pro Bowl studs, if they look like the next coming, I'll gladly be fine with missing on that. But we don't really need to, in my opinion, we don't need to spend a lot of time talking about the tight ends in
As a
this
prospect,
draft.
no, but it's going to be landing spot. You know, if
Yes.
the Patriots take a tight end in the top like 2-3 rounds,
He's a lot
that
more
dude's going at the
interesting.
end of the first, right? I
Yep.
mean, it's going to be
Yep.
ridiculous. But I mean, it seems like as a prospect, no, there's no one like last year's or the 2017 guys or anything like that. But yeah, there's a couple of spots that are good for tight ends coming up. Like you said, Jacksonville, maybe that won't lead to the high rookie drafts, but it's still a good spot to land. Patriots, I mean, does Seattle draft one after all of this because of Disley not being able to stay healthy? And I mean, Hollister's okay, but he's not
Yeah.
the guy. But yeah, it like there's nothing right now you should expect to be like, oh, I need this guy.
And you make a good point. Let me just say this. With the whole Patriots thing, it's not just that just the tight end landed with the Patriots. Gronk was a beast in college. I mean, he was an elite tight end prospect. I, I hope New England takes a tight end early so that can push some value down. So somebody in my league will take one of these tight ends early and just push another player down. I really hope it happens. I get it, but Gronk is he's a different, he's a different cat with tight end. I just look for the athlete. I want to see who's athletic. I look at the combine, who was fast. I'll take a shot on Dawson Knox, who had 9 receptions his junior year and looks like hell he might be a top 15 tight end here in the near future. But I'd wait until 2021. Next year we can have this conversation because there's some studs coming out in 2021 at the tight end position.
Yeah, but you know, Jarrett Stidham's going to need that safety blanket, new tight end.
Yeah, because Tom Brady's going to be a Charger, right? That's the news. That's what everyone's saying right now.
Got a house in LA already.
Oh,
Just saying.
okay.
I just don't know why you would switch out Philip
Hunter
Rivers for
Henry,
Tom
go buy
Brady.
Hunter Henry. Go buy Hunter Henry.
All right, so a little bit of an oddball question, one that I kind of just wanted to throw in here before we go into the Dynasty Diagnostic for the day. Is there that built in the lab prospect for you guys in this draft? Is there that guy that you look at their profile, you maybe seen them on TV or on tape, that checks every single box that you could possibly hope be checked in this draft that you will not leave a draft room without? Is there a guy that you're going to be trading a starting player on your team for a first round pick to go acquire this prospect coming into the 2020 draft?
I mean, the real answer is no. Like the built in the lab part, the answer is no. Is there a guy I'm not going to leave drafts with? I mean, like I said before, I love me some T. Higgins. If again, it's rough now with all like mock drafts you see people doing because there's so much that has to happen. But if he's still falling to the end of the first, beginning of the second, I'm gonna have a lot of him because I will easily trade into that spot to get me a big Clemson wide receiver because that's again I like those guys. Otherwise, I mean, it's no, not right now. I don't think. Someone
Yeah.
else talk.
Yeah, I don't. That's the first round guys. That's hard because I think you got to start looking at rounds 2 and round 3. So if I'm thinking rounds 2 or round 3, guys that I'd be okay comfortable reaching on that I think may fall a little bit is in speaking about the big wide receiver. It's Isaiah Hodgins out of Oregon State, 6'4", 210 pounds. He probably runs the prettiest double move when they send him on slant and goes. He's physical. He's somebody that I probably, if I would reach on in the middle of the second round. And I think he's not going to like test super well. He's not going to run like a 4.4 or anything like that. So I think his value will be suppressed enough. So the only people who really will be focused on Isaiah Hodgins are the people who know the name going in. And of course, I know the name going in. So him, Devin Duvernay, Jalen Rager, but I've got a feeling after the combine there is no value on Rager. I think he's going to be a top 10 pick in rookie drafts, so I can't say that I'll be able to safely get him everywhere. But Hodgins, I feel good about, and Duvernay, I feel okay about, but he's also going to perform well at the combine, and his BMI is out of this world as well.
Can Chuba Hubbard declare? And if he does declare, I mean, is he a
Find out
first round
Wednesday.
prospect?
17th is underclassmen, I believe. I think that's the last day for people to pull out, and then you've got until the 20th. So by the end of this week, we'll know one way or the other if Chuba is going to enter the draft.
If he does declare, is he a first round prospect?
I don't think so. In the real NFL or dynasty rookie drafts?
In
In the
well,
NFL
let's
draft?
say in both, in the NFL and then in dynasty
NFL,
drafts.
no.
Obviously not in the
Rookie,
NFL.
rookie drafts, probably. Yeah, he's running back. He's fast and
Yeah,
he's
running
big.
backs.
Yeah, he's fast and he's big. And he's good. He's a good running back.
It's probably smart to hold out till next year just because of the depth this year and not next year. I mean, Najee Harris holding out, which kind of sucks a little bit. But I still think just if he's worried about draft position as opposed to just wanting to get into the NFL, then I think holding out till next year is probably the smart move.
Yeah, it would definitely be easier to get drafted next year, but that is what it is. Let's now go into what you all came here for. Let's plug in the analyzer. Let's get to this week's Dynasty Diagnostic. Our episode 55 roster was submitted by Ryan Trozen. You can find him on Twitter at TrozenR. Please be sure to give him a follow. If you want to be part of next week's show, all you have to do is follow the podcast at Dino Diagnostic on Twitter. Smash that subscribe button and leave us a review at the link in the description on iTunes and or Podbean. This is a 12-team Superflex 1 point per reception. Start 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, 1 tight end, 2 flex, and 1 Superflex roster. It's quite an interesting one. Superflex kind of adds some intrigue to this one, and for that reason, we're going to start at the quarterback position. Baker Mayfield, who was the son of God himself at the beginning of the season and has now kind of been put down just a tinge, just a bit. Derek Carr and Sam Darnold, who had a very, very surprising second half to the season, for me at least, propelling him into a top 10 QB moving forward. Are we going to think that Baker Mayfield, Derek Carr, and Sam Darnold are going to be viable options at quarterback going into next season, or do we need to make some changes here?
You need to make some changes that you're doing right now to your show sheet because you had Darnold, and that made me lol right there. Like I wasn't sure if that was a nickname I didn't know about or if that was an accident, but that was hilarious.
It was Darnold. We just threw an interception. Darnold. There we go. We're good. Oh man. Baker Mayfield, Derek Carr, Sam Darnold.
Bring it back. All right.
Yeah.
It's a safe. It's
safe.
absolutely safe with Mayfield and Darnold. Carr, there's rumors about not being safe, which why should he be? He's not great. Let Gruden go get some guy. I think he's pretty cuttable, if not just like done with his contract. So whatever. But yeah, Mayfield and Darnold are going to be the starters for the next few years. These guys aren't going to win you championships, but they're not going to lose you games by any means. I am still a huge Baker Mayfield fan. So I believe with experience and someone who isn't just awful at being a head coach. Sorry, Freddie, just it wasn't your time. He'll get better. He'll get back to what he was as a rookie. He'll be good. Go by Baker.
Would you still be singing that same tune if rumors are to be believed and OBJ's out the door?
Did good without him.
What about you? What do you think about this quarterback room, Ray?
I think it's safe. I think there's room like for Mayfield and Darnold to get better. They should get better. I don't think either of them have hit their. He had a bad year. He had a bad year, and Sam Darnold actually played better the second half of the season. Baker had a bad year. Was it hype? Was it who knows what it was? They had a bad year. They got a new coach. Hopefully, there's some stability there. He's still young. He was the top pick in the draft. He looked good. I mean, you could say what you want about him, but he's still a very, very good quarterback talent, very good quarterback prospect that I think has his best football is ahead of him. I don't think he's fallen off the hill or any of that. It lacks a little bit of upside. I mean, I don't know. It's a safe quarterback room. You may need to try to find some depth there. You want to have three quarterbacks in Superflex. That'd be ideal. So maybe some depth if you can.
That's kind of where I was going with that. You
It's
guys
got
hit
the
it.
102.
You guys hit it right on the head when you said it's safe, but it's not going to bring you to the promised land. For me, in a Superflex league, I always want some guy, at least one guy at the quarterback position with extreme upside, even if that extreme upside comes with extreme downside. You guys all know who I'm talking about here, but the guy that I'd be looking to go out and buy right now before anyone knows what's happening with this season is Jameis Winston. I think a lot of people are very, very concerned that Jameis Winston will no longer be a Tampa Bay Buccaneer. I'm one of those people. But at the same time, I feel like he's done enough to at least get franchised this year. And if he does, then you just run it back the same season, next season, hopefully with maybe 5 less interceptions and do it again. Because I think that this is a guy who is going to be one of the most voluminous quarterbacks in the league. And because of that, one of the best fantasy quarterbacks when it comes to just looking at the fantasy numbers. Matthew Stafford would be another guy who I think a lot of people maybe are down on, or maybe just don't think he's that great right now, especially because of the injury, that has extreme upside if given an opportunity. I think he was showing that even at the beginning of this year. Matthew Stafford was in the top 10 quarterbacks and has been a top 10 quarterback for most of his career. He's been Phillip Rivers for his entire career, except a little bit more exciting. And now he actually has options to throw to in the passing game with what we've seen from Kenny Golladay kind of exploding into his evolved form this year. I think that getting a guy like Jameis, getting a guy like Matthew Stafford, getting a guy that people aren't 100% there with yet is going to pay dividends in the future on your dynasty team, because I think you can get him at an acquirable price right now. And I think that's going to give your team the upside it needs at quarterback, even if Mayfield, Carr, and Darnold are starting next season. I do think that I would probably also put Sam Darnold into that same conversation as a guy that, with additions on the outside, could be a real boom quarterback as well. But beyond him, I just don't see anybody else that is going to do anything more than Alex Smith for you. And that's essentially going to be 5th best quarterback, maybe in his best game, nowhere lower than 12th every game this season. And while that's great, that's only great if you have real boom bust pieces that are booming at the right time at your other positions. So I think just for safety, look for a high upside guy that people don't necessarily know about right now. Another one that I would potentially think of, not necessarily a high upside guy, but just a guy to add to a roster right now and kind of see what happens, is Gardner Minshew. I do think that he has some starter years left in him, and I would not be afraid to throw a dart at Marcus Mariota. I do think that the same thing that happened to Ryan Tannehill can happen to someone with Marcus Mariota in a few years. I make fun of him. Everyone that's ever heard this show knows that. I make fun of him and Corey Davis. I don't hate the people. I don't think they're bad football players. I do think that we're going to see an Alex Smith type of resurgence from Marcus Mariota somewhere down the line in his career. I think he's going to put it together. I do still think he's a good quarterback, and he can be acquired fairly cheaply right now because of his current bench status. Ryan Tannehill is going to be signed to be the long-term quarterback, and that leaves Marcus Mariota out of a job, I believe, at the end of the season. So let's go to running backs. Alvin Kamara, a lot of people were down on him just a couple of weeks ago. Had a decent couple of weeks after that, actually hit pay dirt a few times. That seems to be all people care about. So you have him at your RB1 spot. Kenyon Drake is going to be the most interesting running back, I think, this year. And the reason I say that is all those spots that you mentioned, both Ray and Russ, all those prime landing spots, one of them has a big red X on it, and that big red X is because of the presence of Kenyon Drake. He's going to take one of those landing spots. He's going to leave one of those rookies without a home, at least initially, and without a starting spot. So I think that there's some intrigue in Kenyon Drake. Beyond that, I don't know. I'm not a guy that builds through running backs. If you've ever been in Dynasty League with me, you know I usually have 20 wide receivers, one running back, and kind of run it out that way and just hope the guy doesn't get injured. But outside of that, I mean, if this is a legitimate start two running back league, Kamara and Drake, Kamara is good to miss 2 games a season. Drake, I don't think you know exactly what's going to happen next year. I mean, every single pick, every single move you make this offseason, if you're looking to compete in 2020, needs to be getting an RB3 and getting an RB4 on this team stat. Am I wrong in that, or do you guys think that maybe there's another way you can go about this that would lead you to the same result?
So I'm going to sort of spoiler alert the rest of this team right now. We're going to read the wide receiver list, and a lot of it's just going to be like, and then tight end is nice and all. He has the 102. He probably earned the 102. Sorry, dude. Yes. You're rebuilding. It's where we all have those teams. It's fine. I'm selling Kamara and getting picks and getting wide receivers. When we were talking about buying quarterbacks, don't do that right now. For your average team, go do that. For this guy's team specifically, like now that I actually looked further down, hold on to your quarterbacks, sell Kamara, get pieces, get picks, get another solid wide receiver. There's some work to do on this one. But selling Kamara is my first move on this team. Even if you think you can compete, not with start 2 running backs and Kamara and shrugs at the rest of it. So regardless of what you think this team is, you have to sell Kamara.
What about you, right?
Yep. Yeah. Yes. Baker and Darnold look very good now. When you look at the rest of this roster, I wouldn't even be even Carr. I mean, you've got 3 quarterbacks. Disregard what I said about you want to have 3 quarterbacks. You got 3. Carr even if he's a backup somewhere, it's a high-end backup. This team, there are 2 big players that I'm selling if I'm this team, and I don't want to do it. But Kamara is one of the 2 big pieces I think you just need. With the 102, I'm assuming that's the 103 as well.
You have 102 written twice down.
101, 102, 111.
Oh.
Okay. Yeah.
Sell the 101 also.
Sell the 101. Yeah, if you can sell
That's what I'm saying. I think I'll hold on to Kamara and sell the 101.
I'm selling both of them.
I see it both ways, right? And if you're going to sell Kamara, you need to do it. If you want to get picks, you need to sell Kamara now, because after the combine happens, you're just not going to be able to do it. You need to hurry up and do that now. If your plan is to keep Kamara, then you wait. Don't sell the 101 now. You wait a little bit. Wait till 2 his medical comes back clean. Wait until Jonathan Taylor runs a 4.3, and then you unload the 101 and try to get as much as you absolutely. And I know, Russ, you're shaking your head, but there's stages to do this. You don't just. I think if you're going to do that, you wait to sell the pick. If you're going to move Kamara, you hurry up and move him now and try to get max value before people fully grasp what's coming with 101, 102, 103, 104, whatever in the first round. But you've got to. My initial thought is this is a rebuild, and even if you hold Kamara, I don't know by the time you're in contention to compete, what does Kamara look like then? So you probably, I would say you probably sell Kamara, but if you held him, you need to go ahead and what I just said.
I'm generally of the opinion that anytime you have a team that needs some help, you do exactly what Russ said, which is you look at your team, walk up to the biggest player in that room, and give a pink slip and say he's moving, because that's the only way that you can actually get what you need to fix multiple pieces and multiple positions and multiple position groups at the same time. But here's my but. With Alvin Kamara, with CMC, I don't know if these guys are running backs or wide receivers. I really don't. And if there's a chance that they are down the line used more as wide receivers than running backs, then there's more longevity to that. And so I can't really rate them in the same way as I would rate a normal running back. Now, Alvin Kamara didn't have a great year. Alvin Kamara right now, if you tried to get Derrick Henry straight up for Alvin Kamara, people probably aren't taking that deal. But I think that Alvin Kamara 4 years from now still has a career. I don't necessarily know if I can see the same thing as Derrick Henry. And so for that reason, if you can turn this team around quickly, I think that he'd be worth keeping. But, I mean, I completely understand where you guys are coming from, or at least Russ, where you're coming from with, look, you need pieces at every spot. And if that's what you're going to do, that's what you have to do. I just don't know if Kamara is going to net what you want it to net to be able to fix this team right now, because Kamara had the quote-unquote down year, because people generally tend to look at touchdowns. If it was me, like I said before, I'd probably be looking at those picks, thinking about, rookie hit rates and maybe pulling the trigger at that point. But I can definitely see where you're coming from. Regardless, I think our overarching kind of takeaway from this running back room is, man, you need help. Just help. Just
read the wide receivers so I can fix this guy's team for him.
At wide receivers, Dante Pettis, Kenny Stills, who killed my Will Fuller shares this year. I'm so upset about it. J-Jaw, who I don't even know is deserving of a nickname at this point, because he was the only Eagles receiver alive and did absolutely nothing with it. N'Keal Harry, who, may or may not be somewhere in Boston. He might be an alias at this point. We're not sure. We think he got drafted to the NFL, but we saw about a game's worth of him, and it was decent, but it wasn't necessarily what she wanted. Anthony Miller, D.D. Westbrook, Nelson Aguilar, Harmon, Sean Johnson, Juwan Winfrey, Scotty Miller, Alan Lazard on the Green Bay Packers, who really should be drafted over if the Packers are going to do anything this season. I mean, beyond A.J. Brown, I don't know what you do here. And here's why. Here's why I'm not selling Kamara.
Here's why you are selling Kamara.
I'm selling A.J. Brown.
That's the worst thing I've ever. That is the worst idea I've ever heard.
I think
you
AJ
just said,
Brown,
how do you build your teams? How do you build your teams?
Yes. Here's why. Hype is out of control. I think you can get way more for A.J. Brown right now than you can get for Alvin Kamara. I don't think that's right, but I think when you're actually looking at the trade waters and looking at what people are willing to give you right now for this name versus that name, I think you're going to get more of what you need from selling A.J. Brown than selling Kamara. Kamara, I think, is going to net you a first and maybe another first. A.J. Brown can probably get you 2 firsts and a player right now, and that's why I'm selling A.J. Brown.
That's still the wrong answer. You're building around A.J. Brown. Think about how different this team will be. Sell Kamara. You can get, Evans in a second for Kamara right now? So what does your team look like with A.J. Brown? I still like N'Keal Harry. He may not be what we hoped he would be, but I still like him as a player. And again, Stidham's going to need that security blanket. And what if you trade back both the 101 and 102? Trade back 3-4 spots, and you pull CeeDee Lamb and Jonathan Taylor. I mean, you quickly turned this team around like that. You still need a lot more help, so you'll probably end up trading Taylor before the season's over anyway. But look at this wide receiver team core right now.
You need 4.
And think about what it could be.
You need 4 receivers is the way I see it.
What was that?
You said you need 4 receivers is the way I see it. And that's kind of where I'm a little bit lost.
How many do you have to? You have to start 3. Yeah, that's rough.
Start 3.
This team isn't getting turned around in 1 year. That's the unfortunate reality of it. Like, you have a lot of moves you can make. And again, let's spoiler alert the next one. You should trade George Kittle. I knew exactly what you were talking about, Ray, when you said you don't want to do it, but you should. You really should. You can get more to help build your team. And especially if sucking next year helps you get better draft picks, because there's even better wide receivers coming next year anyway. Mm-hmm. So yeah, you still needed. Again, really sorry, man, if you if this isn't where you thought your team was heading, and we're hitting some hard truths right now. But I think it's the smart move. It's a little bit of a long play. So if you're hoping on winning the championship next year or quitting fantasy football, sorry, man. But yeah, I think trading Kamara for a wide receiver, trading 101 and 102 back, don't trade them away. unless you get something crazy, which, after the combine, you might. Like if Tua comes back with full health and, I don't know if he's going to be healthy enough to do the combine, but if he does and even just shows decently, like that's the 101, 102 right there. And, selling quarterbacks is a gold mine in Superflex. So, yeah, you sell everything. Sell Kittle, sell Kamara, those 102, 102, 101, 102. I would say move back because I want CeeDee Lamb on my team. Go get T. Higgins because I'm just going to keep saying that name over and over again. There's just a lot you could do this year to help build your team going forward. You can have a solid core leaving this draft class.
Yeah, that hit on all the points. I mean, George Kittle is probably the most expendable person on this team for a number of reasons. Number one, because I don't know if this is T premium. It doesn't say. I don't think I got that from actually looking at looking at what was sent to me on this roster. But if it is T premium, then even better. George Kittle is the most valuable piece at tight end. That includes Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce, I think, is probably better than George Kittle, maybe a little bit right now. But when you take age into account and you take everything into account, I think George Kittle is definitely the number one asset at that position. For that reason, I think you can split him up for a lot of things. And the other reason that I'd be comfortable selling George Kittle is because you just talked about the void of everything that's in Miami. You have Preston Williams, you have Devontae Parker. Beyond that, I mean, what do you really have? And you need a lot. So it's not like you can spend this entire draft class on offense. So if you get that running back you were talking about, then okay, well, most of your positions are kind of already set. That means that there are going to be targets available for Mike Gesicki. And Mike Gesicki had a good second half of the season if you were paying attention. So I think that's a guy that can be a starting tight end for you moving forward. So that makes, for me, Kittle a little bit more expendable when looking to get those multiple pieces to build your team. But again, even though we have different ways of doing it, I think the consensus here is this is a rebuild team. This is something that we're going to need to spend a few years doing. If you're going to start that process, it's going to take the painful reality that some of your best players need to be immediately jettisoned off this team to give you the opportunity to get some of that capital back. Let's just briefly talk here. So say nothing happens. Say this person doesn't take our advice. This team is as is come draft season. 101, 102, 111. Can you fix this team just using the picks?
I think you got a good if he does nothing, if he doesn't listen to any of the advice, Superflex, you always say go quarterback. So let's just assume he takes either Joe Burrow or Tua, and then he goes DeAndre Swift, and then 111. You got a shot at a T. Higgins. He's got 2 second-round picks. I'm assuming one of them is high. So he's going to get good rookies. And the more darts you have to throw, the better your chances of hitting that bullseye. So I think this is a team that still probably won't compete for a playoff spot. It's still going to be another year away. But I think if he listens to the right people and drafts good players, can be a team that gets better, but it's still going to be, we just talked about it. You don't want to be in the middle of the pack. You want to be horrible or you want to be contending. I don't think this team would be horrible, but I don't think it would contend either. So therefore, he's going to be in the same type of position next year, wondering, what do I do with the George Kittle that's now 28 years old or 27 going on 28 with more wear and tear on Alvin Kamara? I don't know. I think I understand the question, but this guy's got to sell. You have got to sell because he has the assets with the 101, 102, Kittle and Kamara. He could really set himself up to be a juggernaut. And if you're going to do a rebuild, and I've talked about this myself, the years to do it are 2020 and 2021. There's some very talented players coming out, so he could really set himself up to smash in 2020, stink it up in the fantasy season, but then smash in 2021 during the draft. And now he's looking at a team with A.J. Brown and Jamar Chase and DeAndre Swift and CeeDee Lamb and Baker Mayfield. Like, you're looking at a better product overall.
Yeah, I mean, if he felt like throwing value completely out the window and he took whoever the running back one ends up being, whoever the wide receiver one ends up being. Like he could at 101, 102 take Swift and Lamb. At the 111, take Higgins, Rager, whoever has the better landing spot. His team looks nice. And while I love to joke and say the point of Dynasty is to have the prettiest roster, you don't win payouts that way. Though I would love to actually find a way to make that a thing, because I would absolutely work that into my leagues. But it's not going to win you games. It's the unfortunate truth. Like maybe in 2 years you'll have, like you were talking before about Kamara pretty much being a receiver. The problem is he will still be a usable asset. He won't be this high end of an asset. That's the problem. Right now, he is that high end asset. And that's why I'm all about moving him. Because while people, it's really weird, Dynasty owners, like for a guy that is a one, like the one, like Kamara is a one. The second he's not a one anymore, they're like dead. I call it the Dez paradox because it happened with Dez real fast. The second Dez wasn't a wide receiver one anymore, he was dead to everybody. Even though towards the end of his career, he was a decent wide receiver too. Kamara has a way to sort of escape that. You're right with his receiving ability, but that's going to fade. And by the time, if he does build his team again, throwing value out the window, grabbing Lamb, grabbing Rager, all of that, it's going to still take them a year or two. And by that time, Kamara may not be Kamara. He might just be Kamara. So it's going to make it even harder for you to make it to the championship.
I do definitely see that. The reason that I think Kamara is a unique case is because there is going to be a running back out there that gets a contract extension again after Todd Gurley. It's not going to be something that any general manager wants to do, but it's going to happen. If there's going to be one or two, I think, that get contract extensions, I think it's going to be Kamara and I think it's going to be CMC. And I think anytime that a contract extension is announced, there is an increase in value, at least for the month surrounding that contract extension announcement. And for that reason, I think at that point, when Kamara is 26, he's 23 right now. When Kamara's not, he actually has to sign a new contract at the end of this year. But when Kamara is 24, 25, 26, there is going to be a time at that point that you can then sell a 26-year-old asset that obviously is going to be depreciating because you're starting that process really after 25 as a running back. At that point, you can then get out and get the same value that you can now while still having that stud on your team for 2 years. But I do see where you're coming from. I just think that kind of reading the tea leaves in this specific case, that maybe there's a little bit more safety there. But in talking about a normal running back and talking about 99% of the running backs in the NFL, yes, absolutely. If you have a high-value running back right now, if his name's not Saquon Barkley or CMC, you should probably be moving him.
How long do you want this show to be?
That was just my last word here. I'm actually going to give you guys the last word, period, here, but we're going to do it in the way that we do on this podcast. So go ahead and give your last word. My only request is that you put some type of car information, some type of car knowledge, some type of car reference that you find a way to work that into your response. What is this roster to you? Let's start with you, Ray.
Well, I think this roster is the frame is there, right? He's got a frame. When you've got two young quarterbacks, at least the foundation, the framework is there. I can see the shell of the car. Now, with that being said, there are doors on it. They have no handles. There's a place for a windshield. We know one goes there. There is music, but it is not Bluetooth. It is the standard FM AM radio. So the structure of the car is there, but he definitely needs I'm not going to say it's totaled, but he needs new paint. He needs a battery. He's got to put some tires on this bad boy. We've got to get central air. He's got some things that he has to do, but he's got a car. He's got a car. There are some people in Dynasty in a super flex league with no doggone quarterback. And if you have no quarterback, you're totaled. I don't care what you have. You're going to have to sell everything off. It's just not fun. So there is a car there, but you need paint, big dog. You need to get that windshield, the crack in that windshield fixed. You got to upgrade to 2020. get Bluetooth, get Bose, get what's the thing you press, OnStar. He's got to upgrade the technology in his rides. So I hope he takes some advice that he heard here on this show and pimps that bad boy out, because we need Exhibit to come quick.
Wow. Got to follow that. All right. Uh, see, the way I see it, like you're driving down the street and you see some nice 50, 60 sports car on the side of the road with the for sale sign. You drive by, you pull up, you pull over, you kick it a little bit to make sure things don't fall off when you do. So you buy this car and you're thrilled that you could actually drive it home instead of having to get it towed. Like that's what this team is. It could be it was beautiful at one point. It can be beautiful.
Yeah.
It works. If you wanted to just keep driving this thing, it would probably not die right away. But if you could take this home, you already have a nice garage at home with beautiful shiny tools. Like you can bring it home, fix it up yourself, and real quick be driving that nice new new is the wrong word, nice rebuilt shiny sports car. Like that's what this is. The bones are there, the tools are there to make this nice and shiny. It's just not there yet.
That was perfect. That was absolutely perfect. You guys do that much better than we usually do on this show. Yeah, this car for me, it's not totaled. It's I don't know if you can drive it in the same way as you were saying, Russ. I really don't know if it's drivable. I think it's kind of one of those things that like there's cinder blocks where the wheels should be right now, and we need to figure out a way to actually get something that turns on the cinder block spokes. But I mean, I can see what you guys are saying by having the quarterbacks. At least the fact that they're young, that's a plus. Having Kamara, having Kittle, having AJB, whatever you do with those guys, the simple fact that you have them and you can extract value from them, I think is a plus. It's just going to take a lot of creativity and some patience with this team to actually get the guys that you want to make it that, brand new that 1970s car that you can show, that you can take to the car show, that people will actually appreciate, rather than that one that you haven't seen move in 20 years that's at your neighbor's house and just sitting in the front yard. So I do think that there's something here. I do think it's going to take a lot of work, but that is going to be the end of our diagnostic. Quickly before we return the keys, that is, I just kind of want to give this time to go ahead and give over to both Russ and to Ray. Thank you so much for coming on, being my backup today. Sam Lane was not here. You guys were able to fill in admirably for him. I'm sure he appreciates that, and I do very, very much as well. Go ahead and promote anything that you guys might like to.
You can find me on Twitter at RayGQ, host of the Destination Devi podcast, write and rank Devi over at DLF, and just enjoy engaging with people on Twitter. So if you can, check out the show, interact with me on Twitter, and let's have fun talking about some Devi Dynasty prospects. Really enjoyed the show. Thank you for having me on. Really, really appreciate it. I had a very good time for the 2 hours that we've been talking.
And I am at Dynasty Outhouse on Twitter. I have the Trade Addicts podcast with my homeboy at Brian Har FF. That's it. I don't know, man. I assume I'm going to be the editor of this show. Dynasty Game Night. I've just hijacked that show and made it my own. I guess. I don't know. You tell them what I do, man. It's not written down here for me to read on your script of a show sheet, so I don't know.
Yeah, you can find Russ and Ray absolutely everywhere. As they were saying, Ray's very, very involved with Dynasty, with Devi. If you're looking at college rookies, he's the guy to go to. Dynasty Outhouse.
Hold on. How are you here talking right now about who you are and what you do, and not talking about like the 6 promotions that you just got?
Oh no, those were the first things that we brought up. That was the intro.
I don't, man. And honestly, Russ, like, I just like talking college football. Love talking Dynasty, and I had the balls to just say one day I'm going to discuss it on Twitter with people that I don't know, and I'm humbled and grateful for everything that sort of happened. But it's dope. I appreciate DLF for recognizing that, but I'm still just me and I enjoy it. You know what I'm saying? Like senior editor, writer, doesn't matter. It's just Ray GQ, man. Just talk to me and I want to talk college. I want to talk dynasty and the grind never stops, baby.
Congratulations, man. And then Russ, of
Congratulations, man.
course, this man, if anyone listening to this podcast doesn't already know, is the single greatest commissioner in the history of mankind. Scout Fish, I'm putting you in here. You have a challenger. His name is Dynasty Outhouse. He is also, you can find him on numerous podcasts. He's already told you where you can find him. He's going to find him as guests everywhere because he's cool with everybody. He's one of the nicest guys in the community. Please, if you haven't already, reach out to both of these people. If you're not following them, I don't know what you're doing. You should not be following me, not following them. So definitely do that. Thank you so much for being on the show. Please make sure to give us a rating and a review. If you happen to have some extra coin on you and would like an awesome sticker or an awesome shirt, I know that Russ also runs a Store Envy. What is it, like a shop, like an online shop that you do with all the different podcasts? You want to explain that?
Yeah, it's ffpodshirts.storeenvy.com. It really just came down to everyone kept saying, hey, Russ, I kind of want to sell some stuff, but I don't know how to do it. I'm like, well, I already have a shop. Let me just, sell your stuff for you. So it's Trade Addicts, Dynasty Diagnostic, Top Shelf DFF, Dynasty Diagnostic. I threw some Dynasty Game Night stuff on there because, again, I just sort of took them over and did it because I wanted stuff. So there's shirts, mugs, stickers, hoodies. You want something, ask for it. But the cool part is 10% of all the sales will go to Fantasy Cares. So, buy something for yourself, and the holiday season, it gets something for some other kids. Did Aton really just drop out right now? Is that what happened?
I am wondering because the screen went like his light went
It looks like
low.
he just looked like it turned his camera off.
Looks like he just said the hell with you. I mean, it's been 2 hours. I understand.
Well, so let's do this. Thanks for making it to the Dynasty Diagnostic Service Center today. Be sure to keep up with your scheduled maintenance and catch us next time to ensure quality performance. See you on our next visit.
Peace. There we go. I guess I'll stop Audacity.
No shit, I never started that.
Well, I guess he'll I'm gonna download the file or export the file. So he should be I hope he got it, Russ. Well, I enjoyed meeting you.
Yeah, it's nice talking to you, man. Like, I really am a huge fan of yours, by the way.
Same here, man. Like, honestly, and it's funny, Commish McGriff, Matt Griffin, always talks about you and just how nice of a guy you are. So to be on with you tonight, I was like, let's see if he really is. So it was really, really enjoy. I can't wait to text Matt and be like, Russ is dope. I just got off of a pod with him. So nah, man, appreciate you and interacting with you on Twitter has been a pleasure. So
yeah, for reals, man. You ever want to come on Trade Addicts, you let me know. If you have any spare time to podcast these days.
Oh my gosh. My wife is probably hating me right now. So
I had to wait till mine fell asleep. That's why I didn't come down right
away. Mine is sleeping as soon as I tip in the room. You're just now getting to bed. Yes, they took too long. I'm sorry, babe. What do you want me to do? I'm a podcaster.
Just, babe, I'm a big deal on the internet.
Exactly. Come on. Oh, look at this. We're still going.
I wrapped your show up for you, man. Don't worry about it.
He did wrap it up.
Nice. You're super gracious. Thank you so much for being on the podcast this week, guys. I don't know what the hell just happened, but it is my life technology. That's all I can say. Thank you for joining us at the Dynasty Diagnostic. Please make sure to join us next week to ensure that you do not miss any single one of our service sessions. Talk to you guys next week.
I'm totally leaving in my part.
Yeah, your part was good. I mean, yeah. All right, so is there a share folder